Hello, and welcome to the Seren Stay-at-Home Series archive. This video features poet Ben Wilkinson reading from his collection Way More Than Luck. He also reads some new work and shares some of the poems that have featured in his Poems for the Lockdown videos. We hope you enjoy watching it back.
Hi everyone, I'm Amy Wack from Seren Press. If you don't know me already, you might well. We're here tonight to present Ben Wilkinson, who is one of our finer youngest poets here, sporting a new look, some like whiskers, looking very good, looking very stylish. Ben was born in Staffordshire and lives in Sheffield, has an MA and a PhD from Sheffield Hallam University, is a teacher and a lecturer. He is a prize-winning poet. He's won prizes in the poetry business and the Northern Writers Award. He reviews wonderfully, beautifully intelligent reviews in The Guardian and in the TLS, such places, gorgeous reviews of other people's books. And also his book came out from Seren in 2018, not so long ago, back when people could actually meet and have poetry readings. Way More Than Luck. And we were just speaking of Liverpool football team. I hope maybe he'll read a couple of those poems. Because no, maybe. But here, welcome Ben, and let's have some poems. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy, for that lovely introduction. I'm going to read a mixture of poems tonight. So as Amy said, most of them will be coming from Way More Than Luck. My debut volume is Seren. I'm also going to read some poems from a series that I've been putting together for uploading to YouTube called Poems for the Lockdown, where I've been choosing various contemporary and modern poems to share with people via that medium. And then I'm going to finish with some newer stuff and also a poem that is very, very old, which feels kind of appropriate in this lockdown period where nostalgia seems to be a theme that's sort of emerging. Some relief. Relief as the sunset's small reprieve. Relief as the look on the found boy's sorry face. Relief in pissing in the woods on a freezing winter hike. Relief as belch or burp. Relief as the train doors still open. Relief when slowly sinking into the bath's warm curve. Relief in a filing cupboard. Relief waking to the panic of Monday morning, moments before the dawning revelation of Sunday. Relief as laughter in the company of strangers. Relief as laughter at one's own absurdity. Relief in the dog's eyes, thundering downstairs to find you home from the shops. Relief as waived cost. Relief as light strained through the bars of a prison cell, your prison cell, on the day of release. Relief in a kindly face. Relief in an act of kindness given or received amid the city's faceless stream. Relief at the kind of day that makes the rest of this life worthwhile. Relief in coming down. Relief in standing on the fell after rainfall, looking down at the town. The houses, your house, smaller than you imagined. Everything somehow more manageable for now. So I started off with that poem because we all need some relief in lockdown, I think. So I tend to start readings with the kind of first third of this book, which is a series of poems really that chart experiences of sort of clinical depression, but also ways that poetry might prove a kind of charm or spell or foil against those kind of worst experiences in people's lives. So the next poem I'm going to read is called Hound, and it takes that kind of archetypal Churchillian image of the black dog and tries to kind of turn it into something new. And when I was writing this poem, I always sort of thought back to the Irish poet Michael Longley, who said, if I knew where poems came from, I'd go there. But I'm not entirely sure that I want to hurry back to this place all the time. Hound. When it comes, and I know how it comes from nowhere, out of night like a shadow falling on streets, how it waits by the door in silence, a single black thought, its empty face. Don't let it tie you down to the house. Don't let it slope upstairs to spend hours coiled next to your bed, but force the thing out, make it trudge for miles in cold and wind and sleet. Have it follow you, the faithful pet it pretends to be, this mutt like a poor man's Cerberus. Tell it where to get off when it hangs on with its coaxing look. Leave it tethered to a lamppost and forget those pangs of guilt. No, it's no dog there but a phantom, fur so dark it gives back nothing. See your hand pass through its come and go presence, air of self-satisfied deception, just as the future bursts in on the present, its big I am, and that sulking hound goes to ground again. So something that I also address in this collection is the idea of running, specifically sort of distance running, as a kind of therapy and combat against, I suppose, depression specifically, but you know, kind of difficult feelings in general. And I think during this lockdown period, a lot of people have sort of returned to running or discovered running, or even just walking, you know, out in their local park. They found a way to kind of reconnect with the world around them in a way that perhaps the kind of busyness of our lives stops us from doing sometimes. And I think that kind of connection is really vital and essential. So this poem sort of picks up on that idea. It's called Where I Run From. And I should say the first line is completely stolen from Haruki Murakami. What I talk about when I talk about running is nothing. Running is not a keep fit regime. Your limits are not your limits. Running is not escapism. The miles hammer back to the heart. Running is not the tough guy's stance. It's you versus you, the you used to be, before you realize pain is certain, but sorrow is a choice. Running is not opposition, though it can be competitive as camaraderie, the respect that comes with knowing all that went into it, the discipline, the work, the setbacks, the self. Running is the pure solitude of a wordless hour. What I talk about when I talk about running is nothing. Talk is talk. Running is being. So as Amy mentioned, the central sequence in this book explores football, specifically through Liverpool Football Club. I'm a fan of Liverpool Football Club for my sins. I've always said that, actually, whenever I've introduced this sequence, for my sins. But now I don't feel that's really justified, because we seem to actually be quite good and winning things rather than coming a cropper. But the idea really in this sequence was to, through a series of kind of character portraits, explore something of the social and political features of football, how football's kind of morphed and changed over the decades, and the kind of importance that it holds within communities and within certain people's lives. I think a lot of people are missing football at the moment as a way of kind of escape. Many people are probably happy to see the back of it. I'm just going to start with the opening poem from this sequence. It's called Prologue. This one's for the kids stood on each other's shoulders, edging for a glimpse of their latest hero at Melwood. For the single dad and his redoubtable daughter, huddled together for what's unsaid, yet understood. For the blood of lads at trials who'll never make it, taste the bittersweet thrill of pulling the shirt on once. For the strange hope, indefatigable in replica kit, a name to conjure with, court the gods of chance. For what it means to shiver in February rain on a Monday night, carrying home that 2-0 loss, and to do the same next week next month, again weighing the distance run against its cost. This is for a love beyond the smear campaigns, the media's hooligans. This is for the beautiful game. So if you'll indulge me, I'm just going to read some of these character portraits. They take sort of different forms, but they focus on managers and players throughout Liverpool Football Club's history. The first is Bill Shankly, who's obviously a very famous individual as the manager that really sort of made Liverpool into the force that they became. And this poem's a bit of a cheat, really. It's one of those poems which was a gift, in the sense that I just took brilliant things that Bill Shankly had said, sort of philosophical little statements that he was given to making, and I just put line breaks in. So this might well be the best poem in the book, but it's nothing to do with me. Bill Shankly. Always pass the ball forward, lads. Always pass to a red shirt. A football team's like a piano. You need 8 to carry it, and 3 who can play the damn thing. Ours is a simple sport, the give and take of passes, control of the ball. Make yourself available. It is that simple. Thing is, some know the rules, but they don't know the game. Lads, you'll do well if you remember 2 things. Believe that you're the best, and then make sure of it. At a club, there's a holy trinity. The players, the managers, and the supporters. Football is not a matter of life and death. It is much more important than that. The trouble with you, son, is that all your brains are in your head. The next character is John Barnes, a player that I admired really because his response to racism throughout his career as a footballer was really just to be better than anybody else and to play harder despite the kind of jeers. And this poem references 2 kind of moments, key moments, memorable moments in his career. One, when he scored the most improbable and un-English goal whilst playing for England, in that he essentially just ran half the length of the field past 5 Brazilians and slotted it in the back of the net. And the other instance is a game, cup tie between Liverpool and Everton at Goodison, where he was famously photographed backheeling a banana that had been hurled at him from the stands. And it just comes with a little epigraph from the man himself. Those people couldn't get under my skin. Brazil boasted Pelé, Garrincha and Zico, but drooled the day an English lad skipped past their back 5, a dancing shadow striking home to leave the hosts speechless, the National Front quiet. Years later, a Merseyside tie at Goodison. Dark slurs circle the stands as malice gets hurled over touchlines. Head hung as you backheel, of all things, a banana launched by some half-cut thug. Play on, and you would, hurtling up the wing to arch a sweeping, goal-bound ball. The Blues slumped amid a Copite song. He stands proud while all defenders fall. I think I'll just read one more poem from this sequence. Kenny Dalglish, who's been quite unwell of late, did test positive for COVID-19. So obviously sort of good wishes to him. The thing about Kenny Dalglish as a player and a manager, I think, was that he lived and breathed Liverpool Football Club in a way that our kind of cynical modern age might, kind of countenance against. He attended every single one of the funerals of the 96 who died in the tragic Hillsborough disaster, and he ended up leaving his role as manager, because the stress and the outpouring of grief and his kind of shouldering of that burden for the entire city, and certainly for the supporters, was too much for him. So this poem kind of picks up on some of those ideas. Kenny Dalglish. Day breaks to heavy clouds over Anfield Road, the Sabbath beyond that echoing afternoon. Gates opened, the faithful bring flowers, wreaths, notes, sisters, mothers, fathers weeping, placing them in the goalmouth, the 18-yard box, past the halfway line. You'd think for all the world it had snowed. Then one man, making no fuss, steps up, sits down 2 teddy bears gifted by his kids. A man who's performed miracles on this field, resurrected hopes, who'll pay his respects to everyone, not in duty's name, but love's. They supported Liverpool Football Club. It's the turn of the club to support them. Okay. I'm going to move away from Way More Than Luck for a little while, and I thought I'd talk slightly about the Poems for the Lockdown project that I've been doing. So I'm going to read some poems by others, because one of the things that I always like in poetry readings is if the poet reads a poem or two by somebody else, a poem that they admire. So this, the idea really behind Poems for the Lockdown was to kind of return to my own sort of home library, I guess, of poetry collections. As Amy said, I review and have reviewed for many years. I'll give up one day. It's a terrible thing. But what I've done is accumulate a lot of poetry books, essentially, and I never have the heart to get rid of any of them. So I was sort of just picking a book from the shelf each day, flicking through it and thinking, what speaks to me in this moment. And so sometimes I've chosen poems that might have a particular resonance to our current situation, to lockdown. So they might be about isolation, they might be about, kind of connection, they might be about community or hope. In other instances, they were just poems that I thought were beautiful and that were worth sharing. So I'm going to read 3 of these, and they're kind of mixture of modern and contemporary. The first I'm going to read is from Lou McNease's poems. This isn't a first edition, but it is its original printing. It has the most brilliantly bonkers blurb. So this just gives you an insight into, I suppose, kind of the poetry landscape in the 1930s. After a distinguished reputation while an undergraduate at Oxford, contemporary with Mr. Auden, Mr. Louis McNeice has allowed his verse to appear only rarely in periodicals and anthologies. His classical scholarship has informed a genius representative of the spirit of his Northern Ireland, the most original Irish poet of his generation, dour without sentimentality, intensely serious without political enthusiasm. His work is intelligible but unpopular, and has the pride and the modesty of things that endure. I mean, you don't see many blurbs like that these days, do you? However honest it might be in some ways. The poem that I've chosen from this collection, which is McNeice's first collection published in 1935, is Wolves, which I think is a kind of apt poem for the current moment, in that it is about, I suppose, ostensibly reflection, and about the way in which the babble and noise of the world helps us to kind of avoid introspection at times. Wolves. I do not want to be reflective anymore, envying and despising unreflective things, finding pathos in dogs and undeveloped handwriting, and young girls doing their hair, and all the castles of sand flushed by the children's bedtime, level with the shore. The tide comes in and goes out again. I do not want to be always stressing either its flux or its permanence. I do not want to be a tragic or philosophic chorus, but to keep my eye only on the nearer future, and after that, let the sea flow over us. Come then. Come closer, all of you. Form a circle. Join hands and make believe that joined hands will keep away the wolves of water who howl along our coast, and be it assumed that no one hears them among the talk and the laughter. Okay, poor Julia Copus. So, In Defense of Adultery, not in the voice of a Dalek, a fantastic collection. It was published back in 2003, a collection that probably deserved, I think, more plaudits than it got. And I don't think I really need to say very much about this poem, apart from the fact that I think its development of images, its kind of sustained conceit is really incredible and just brilliant. In Defense of Adultery. We don't fall in love. It rises through us the way that certain music does, whether a symphony or ballad. And it is sepia-coloured, like spilt tea that inches up the tiny tube-like gaps inside a cube of sugar lying by a cup. Yes, love's like that. Just when we least needed or expected it, a part of us dips into it by chance or mishap, and it seeps through our capillaries. It clings inside the chambers of the heart. We're victims, we say, mere vessels, drinking the vanilla scent of this one's skin, the lustre of another's eyes, so skillfully darkened with bistre. And whatever damage might result, we're not to blame for it. Love is an autocrat and won't be disobeyed. Sometimes we manage to convince ourselves of that. Okay, the last from this little series that I'm going to read is from Paul Muldoon's very hefty 1968 to 1998 collected poems. I think obviously now a lot of talk around Muldoon is about his work kind of, I suppose, post kind of mid 80s. And he's become obviously a hugely significant poet in many ways. But what I go back to most often, I think, are the lyric poems that he wrote in his youth, which I think are just amongst some of the most beautiful. So the poem that I've chosen is from his first collection. It's called Wind and Tree. I think this was written when he was 20. So it's disgustingly precocious and just incredible. Wind and Tree. In the way that the most of the wind happens where there are trees, most of the world is centered about ourselves. Often where the wind has gathered the trees together and together, one tree will take another in her arms and hold. They're branches that are grinding madly together and together. It is no real fire. They are breaking each other. Often I think I should be like the single tree, going nowhere, since my own arm could not and would not break the other. Yet by my broken bones, I tell new weather. Okay. Return to Way More Than Luck for a couple of poems, and then, as I say, I think I'll finish up with some newer stuff. So one of the things that I find quite interesting is those strange and untranslatable words that we know and that we come across in our lives. I suppose the term for it often is idiolect. So more than kind of dialect, those kind of words that are shared by a community. It's those words that are especially kind of specific to a family. And thinking about Paul Muldoon, he has the poem Quoof, obviously one of his most famous poems, which is, sort of ostensibly about this hot water bottle, this name for the hot water bottle that his family had when he was growing up. And when apparently he asked his dad where this word had come from, he said, "Well, I heard it from you," which is, kind of a wonderful story in a Muldoonian sense, perhaps apocryphal, but I like to believe that it's true. So a word that I've kind of returned to over the years, and this is one that has a bit more mileage than quoof, is nesh, a word that some of you might be familiar with. I haven't really mapped it in that kind of Ian Macmillan style way of trying to work out where the fault lines in our geography are as to where nesh kind of peters out. But it's certainly something that I grew up with in the West Midlands, and something that I've encountered sort of in parts of Yorkshire, and maybe in Lancashire as well. Essentially, it's a word to describe somebody who's a bit kind of wet behind the ears, somebody who feels the cold quite easily. So I probably don't need to say much else apart from the fact that I was a very sensitive child. Nesh. Not cold, but given to feeling the cold. A slip of a boy waiting for the number 12 as a summer breeze floats in, suddenly shivering. Or the way my mum used to tell my brother and me to take our coats off, even though we'd soon be out again. You'll not feel the benefit, she'd scold sagely. And who were we to argue? Nesh is for those of us who sense someone walking over our grave, who need the perfect imprecision of the poem, made from language's shoddy array, to get us through the day. Look at you, sat on the doorstep, having forgotten your keys again, the slightest chill biting at your neck. I'd give you my coat if you weren't 15 years dead. Okay, so I think the last poem that I'll read from Way More Than Luck is a poem called Two Clouds. I'm interested in the ways, I guess, that places have ongoing kind of personal significance to people. I've lived in Sheffield for too long now, probably, for most of my adult life, but I've lived sort of various lives here, and I'm sure sort of you guys can probably sympathize with that idea of places that you return to, and they almost seem to have this kind of stratigraphy, you know, kind of like archaeology, like your life is kind of sort of structured through them, and you can feel like you're walking through your past at times if you're kind of particularly susceptible to that at a given time. So I guess this is really a poem that's about the idea of kind of landscape as book. Something that kind of remains the same, but something that we can return to in new ways over the years. Two Clouds. Think of mornings we'd head for the hills, the world quiet for the chatter of water, a lone walker calling back his dog, still deep in the woods, deepening shelter. The rain would pelt us like pine needles, us struggling up Clough Lane again, making sense of the sky's doodles, chance and happenstance and change. I ran those paths alone today, pausing at the forge's broken water wheel, the faint sound of a distant barking, ringing the valley to sharpen steel. Clear skies, like only in winter. Yet I swear two clouds map the hillside together. Okay, just finish up with a few sort of newer pieces. So I guess what I've been trying to do in the poem since Way More Than Luck is explore voice a bit more. I'm kind of interested in the ways in which poems can inhabit different voices, and I've become increasingly interested in the kind of the functions of the dramatic monologue. So I've got a couple of poems that kind of pick up on that idea. The first of these poems picks up on my sort of misspent youth working in and of course sort of drinking in pubs. So this is a kind of composite character based on chats that I've had, and the poem's called What the Doorman Says. That he could kill for a smoke, that the punters get older every year, that really he hardly ever has to lay a finger, that even arterial blood washes right out. But the fella with the dog sat at the furthest end of the bar is, all told, a cunt. That sometimes he dreams of jacking it all in, moving to Cornwall to open a fish and chip shop. That booze, generally speaking, brings out the worst in everyone. That his wife could be anywhere right now. That he's been dry for 5 years since she left, bar the one lapse. That he's seen it all before. That you didn't need to worry about a gang of blokes as much as a serious hen party rocking up. That letting punters choose the music from a jukebox with an internet connection is a fucking stupid idea. That I should mind my own business. That he could kill for a smoke. That too many kids have knives on them nowadays. That the punters get older every year. That you learn a thing or two about life watching a grown man fall down on his own vomit. That he wouldn't let his daughter near this place. That a good strong cup of tea will do him nicely, Tar. That booze, generally speaking, brings out the worst. I'm a regular commuter on trains, and so like many, I have a fraught relationship with our national rail service. And you hear a lot of automated apologies if you spend a lot of time on train platforms. A lot of kind of apologies that aren't actually apologies. That it's just a robot saying, you know, oh, we're really sorry, but this will continue indefinitely. So this poem sort of comes out of having spent too much time, I think, listening to those sorts of things. And it's just called We Apologise. We apologise that the 1818 to Cleethorpes has been cancelled due to leaves on the line, fuel shortage, intergalactic warfare, Wi-Fi interference patterns, spilt latte from the buffet car, the spontaneous combustion of a staff member, dark matter, the axis of evil, a carriage coupling issue, major fault, extreme weather, fluctuating value of the pound, cognitive dissonance, irretrievable mass data loss, your mum, the Gulf Stream, platform wobbliness, please listen for further announcements, narcoleptic driver, insufficient rail capacity, unexpected item in the bagging area, mechanical anxiety, enfant terrible, musical epidemic, Schimmel's disease, the last scintilla of doubt, time's arrow, widespread ennui, insert, delete as appropriate. Okay, so the poem I'd like to finish with this evening is a longer poem. It's actually a poem that I wrote 10 years ago, and that's set in a place that was very fond to me further back than that. And I think one of the features of lockdown is that it hasn't really allowed many of us to move forward in our lives. So as I kind of alluded to earlier on in the reading, I think nostalgia perhaps has been something that's been a recurring theme for many people during this time, looking back on earlier parts of their life. Really, this poem was just an attempt to kind of bottle an experience in that kind of Larkinian way. But it was given a kind of new lease of life recently by Ella Risbridge, who shared it on her Instagram recently. Thanks for being a lovely and attentive and patient audience. I'll try not to do a Dalek impression at any point during this one. Invocation. Here's to hope that decades on, I still remember it all. How the rain played a heavy beat on the skylight, the nights I sat reading Derrida, then Not So Sure. Cigarette smoke drifting from the ashtray on my desk, Sam and Joe in stitches at the 3rd season of Scrubs. Mornings when that brunette undressed before a window and must have known that half the street might see her. The day we found police line, do not cross, sealing off Eastwood Road, uncovering an attic full of marijuana, and our unruly garden, all weeds, one growing to 6 feet in 3 weeks when we left the place over Easter. The distant throb of techno filtering through the windows, our living room's threadbare carpet, textured white walls, the nightly wailing alarm of some Corsa, Igo or Golf. That evening we played Articulate while pissed, Brawley somehow confusing Charles Dickens with Oliver Twist. Those final months brimming with all this, the milk bottles sitting on our porch uncollected, full with stagnant water. My hair curly, wild and unkempt, and 3 times longer than it ever was or has been since. Roni's bacon baps twice a week for breakfast. Kids on BMXs flying along the pavements. Summer days of rain continually pouring while the leak from our attic's knackered shower snaked behind the wallpaper. Long Friday nights at the Lescar. Junk mail, misdirected mail, and flyers dropping through the letterbox. Jars and tubs of stuff sat in the fridge forever. Eating tin soup, pasta bake, Marmite and toast, muesli. The long walk from Brocco Bank up towards Walkley. Early hours laughter, heading home from the lead mill. The Guardian, 10 deck of Marlboros and pint of milk from the newsagents. The radio blaring, Rich singing Club Tropicana as he scrambled eggs in our kitchen. The pollen count through the roof, the lead clean stolen in the middle of the night from the local church's roof, and all of us, for the last time, gathered in that front room, our stuff in boxes, sitting, waiting, with the rain hurling down. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. That was excellent. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you everyone for coming. And as I say, hopefully there wasn't too much of a kind of darling interlude. But yeah, it's lovely to see everybody. Thanks for coming
Beautiful
out.
poems, really beautiful. Thank you so much, Ben. Are you still doing lockdown poems now every day?
Not every day, I've lapsed.
You've lapsed? What?
It got too much. I've started just sort of saying, sort of number 37 as opposed to day 37. They are continuing in some form or another, but they won't be quite as frequent perhaps. But yeah, if people are interested and they want to check out the poems that are there, they're on the YouTube. So
thank you so much, Ben. Thanks to everybody for coming. Ben, you must be bereft about the football, though. There's no football whatsoever.
Don't even get me started.
I know.
There's something in the universe that wants to stop Liverpool.
Stop Liverpool from going all the way.
Title, I think. That's the fact of the matter.
Oh, I don't think so. They'll be back, right? Klopp's got them all running back.
It looks like they're going to play out the season now. So I expect what will happen is we'll all still be kind of socially distancing, so nobody will be able to celebrate, but we will be able to lift the cup anyway.
Oh.